Use. Yeah, and if you move quickly, it looks like a psychedelic experience.
Oh, settings here. Where is it? Under window and settings? It's not popping up.
You
So
go to your video, where it says stop video, there's a pull down there, the choice, and then you get your backgrounds in there.
Oh, got it. Great.
Okay, we are live on YouTube, and I think we have all of our commissioners. Stephen LaBonge is not expected. And am I missing anyone from Creeks that should be on? Okay.
Let's see, how many Creeks people do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4.
We take exception to the term Creeks people.
So I apologize. Commissioners, Creeks commissioners,
So not
Commissioner Creek people.
humans. Okay, we are.
I think we lost someone. I think we have 6, right? We have a quorum.
Great. Christina, I think you can go ahead and get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, I was just checking to see who's here on the Creeks Committee. I had it listed. So we have David Clark, Jeff
Sound off, would it
Gilman.
be easier for us to?
We'll just do a roll call after we do the Planning Commission roll call.
And are you Philip Bradley?
Yes,
Okay. Would you mind putting your name up in the place of your email address?
Oh, I could do that for you here.
okay.
no, I'm not going to accept your
Ronald
helping.
Huff.
Yeah, what do you need? Do you need the Philip Bradley part or just?
No, okay, so you're all here, your whole committee. Is that correct? I think so. Okay.
I think most people, yeah.
Okay, it's 7:06. We'll call this joint Planning Commission and Creeks Committee meeting on November 15th to order, and we'll do a roll call by name. Vice Chair Farsan,
Present.
Commissioner Heising,
Present.
Commissioner LaBonge has an excused absence. Commissioner Maggio,
Present.
Commissioner Mason,
Present.
Commissioner Radnich,
Present.
and then Creeks Committee members Will Elder,
Present.
Philip Bradley,
Present.
David Clark,
Present.
Jeffrey Gilman,
Present.
Ronald Huff,
Present.
Peter Norton, is not here.
He was here earlier.
I saw him in the attendees. I just let him in.
Okay. We're taking roll call, Peter. I just called your name.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay,
Present.
okay. And Austin Payne.
Here.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there was a motion by Commissioner Heising, second by Vice Chair Farsan, and then I do a full roll call vote of the Creeks Committee too for the agenda. Sarah?
Sure.
Sorry? What'd you
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. All right. Vice Chair Farzan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich,
Aye.
committee members Will Elder,
Aye.
Philip Bradley,
Aye.
David Clark,
Aye.
Jeffrey Gilman,
Aye.
Ronald Huff,
Aye.
Peter Norton,
Aye.
Austin Payne.
Aye.
Oh, and Chair Sturm, sorry, I didn't say my own name in the roll call, and so I'm voting aye for adopting the agenda. Okay, item 4, public comment for items on the agenda that fall within the purview of the Planning Commission and or the Creeks Committee.
So if you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand using your raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or you can also use *9 if you are calling in. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, item 5, our consent calendar. We have one item, the AT&T wireless application at the BART, which the Planning Commission saw last time. Or no, not our last meeting before that. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Motion. Okay, motion by Commissioner Radnich, second by Vice Chair Farsan. And this one will just take a roll call vote of the Planning Commission. Okay.
Correct.
Vice Chair Farsan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Labange, Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich,
Aye.
and Chair Sturm. Aye. Okay. Let's see. Item 6, we have no continued public hearings, so we're on to item 7, new public hearings. 7A. I don't know, TR application TR for TR 9540, design review 0720 at 950 Huff. Retail business zoning, request for design review for the demolition of an existing commercial building and the construction of a new 4-story multifamily development containing 20 units and podium parking with a max height of 49 feet. There's also a major subdivision through a tract application required, tree permit, grading permit for, let's see, approvals on a commercially developed parcel located at 950 Huff Avenue, and the project qualifies for an infill exemption under CEQA and includes a state density bonus, concession, and waiver requests. And actually, before our staff report, I forgot to make my little statement at the beginning of the meeting about public comment. So public comment submitted before the meeting to the planner@lovelafayette.org address have been distributed to all planning commissioners and Creeks Committee members if applicable, and are part of the public record. Members of the public may submit live public comment during this Zoom meeting by using the raise hand feature, and any graphic that a speaker wishes to use should have been emailed to planner@lovelafayette.org by 3 p.m. today. And then again, if for some reason you're logged in through the YouTube channel and don't know about how to join the meeting, you can find the link on the city's calendar, click on this meeting, and it's in the agenda. Okay, so we are ready for our staff report on item 7A.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners and Creeks Committee members. The item before you is DR 0720 and major subdivision TR 9540, which proposes demolition of an existing 3,000 square foot commercial building and construction of a new 4-story multifamily development of approximately 46,400 square feet at 950 Huff Avenue. The project requires design reviews since it's within the downtown, major subdivision, grading, demolition, and tree permit approvals. The subject property is zoned RB retail business and located at the south central edge of the downtown retail district and within a half mile of public transit. The lot is just shy of a half an acre, flat graded with the steep creek banks at the rear leading to Lafayette Creek. It's also within the AO and AE flood zones. Here's a brief summary of the project. The project proposes 24 cell units with 25 parking spaces, 18 bicycle spaces, and 2 motorcycle spaces. Auto parking can also potentially be increased 22 spaces since the garage has been designed to accommodate future car lifts. Of the 20 residential units, 17 are allowed per density and 3 bonus units are allowed under state density bonus law since the project is providing 15% affordable units. The inclusionary units consist of 1 2-bedroom and 2 3-bedrooms, and will be all at moderate income level. In addition to exceeding density, waivers from development standards are requested under the state density bonus law for height, setback, open space, parking, landscaping, and design objective standards. The applicant is also requesting a concession from complying with the public art requirement. The applicant is also seeking a creek exception as proposed, since the proposed rear deck is within the creek setback. The 4-story building will be 3 residential floors over podium parking. Height is actually 48 feet to the top. That was an error in the agenda, since they did reduce it at the design review stage. And the 4th floor is set back about 85 feet from the front building wall, and the side walls between 3 and 12 feet. The project was previously reviewed by the Design Review Commission on October 14th and the 28th. The DRC voted to forward the application to the Planning Commission with qualified recommendations of approval with conditions. One's to provide stucco articulation on the 10-foot wall along the northern boundary. 2, to soften the framing around the garage door with additional planting. And 3, to require a springing easement for public access to the rear deck along the creek. The applicant is amenable to these conditions, but with the qualification that the springing easement is limited to a north-south creek access and not directly from Huff, the right-of-way. These are the revised renderings, the front and the side. These were received at 5 p.m. today. So it differs a little bit from what was uploaded originally and what you had reviewed. This shows additional landscaping at the front as requested by the DRC. Since publication of the staff report, staff received 2 public comments, which were forwarded to the commission earlier. One from S. Uzel, complimenting the aesthetic design, but also expressing concern with the amount of parking provided. And Ty Allison expressing opposition to the project. This letter was previously submitted to the Design Review Commission, so it's not any new information. Staff recommends that Planning Commission and the Creeks Committee provide comments to the applicant, find the project exempt from CEQA, and adopt Resolution 2020-21 forwarding recommendation of approval to the City Council with conditions recommended by the Design Review Commission. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, as well as the City Engineer, Matt Luttrip, for any questions relating to the creek and creek setback.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, so let's go through, let's see if we can keep our questions somewhat organized. So maybe, does anyone have any questions about the building, either the units or setbacks or anything related to massing or design of the building? Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding to the right of way or linkages back to the rear of the property? Commissioner Maggio?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could staff please review the back creek in the diagram? And I know we're on the edge of the downtown, the creek plan. Just trying to get a feel for where that path would end, or would it continue? Could we just take a look at that in a little bit more detail?
Let me just pull up the creek set plan for you.
Yeah, the creek slam, that would be very helpful.
So this is the subject property. It is the very last property identified under the creeks plan. Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to share.
Sure, yeah.
So this is the subject property, and it's the last property that is identified under the Creeks plan as providing some sort of path.
Okay, so the path is the dotted line or the red or the black?
So technically, what is identified as actual pathway is the orange, and
Okay.
the yellow is here, but the property itself doesn't
Okay.
identify any actual path that's recommended by the Creeks plan.
Okay, so it's
The Creeks plan is a little generic in its goals of trying to increase public access to viewing areas and provide pathways and access to the creek. In this particular case, we thought that the 950 Huff property would allow the residents of that property and as adjoining properties are developed, access to the orange one that is shown on this plan that Nancy pulled up for you.
okay. Could you take the cursor, Nancy, and just direct me through where you're thinking that access should be to the creek? Through there, and then keep going. Connect the dots. Okay, so it's a ways. So that's the creek there, though. The little blue line is the creek.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding access to the creek? Committee member Gilman?
Yeah, just to explore a little further what Matt said. What Nancy showed from the creek plan was in an appendix. That was some of the earliest work that we did, where we were identifying existing conditions and potential opportunities to do things along the creek. When we get into the plan itself, there's a chapter on public improvements, which the city has, I don't want to say full control over, but we have a lot more ability to implement things in the plan on public property. And then there's a chapter on private improvements, where it's important to think of it as a vision for the future. So they're not prescribed features. They're more like, these are the types of things that could be done, and these are the goals. And one of the overarching goals is to afford a creek experience, and in some places that ties in with commercial use of the properties. Thinking of examples like San Luis Obispo that has a lot of restaurants that face their creek. We want to improve circulation, but it shouldn't be viewed as a prescription. So I think really what we're trying to do is to preserve an opportunity to do something in the future that would allow Lafayette residents to access the creek. And one other thing, I don't mean like access the creek necessarily, like go down to the water, but thinking more of a top of the bank creek viewing and the surrounding riparian zone.
Thank you for going through that. I had a question about, what, I guess maybe for Nancy, what conversations have taken place with the neighbor at 101 Lafayette Circle regarding, I think you said they weren't amenable to a shared pathway back to the creek, since the remaining area and grade on this property, given the proposal, is pretty small for a pathway. I'm just wondering what any thoughts staff had or Matt had about how that would work, especially given the 10-foot high CMU wall.
I can jump in if you like. I think the idea is ultimately, as all the adjoining parcels are redeveloped going towards the church, that pathway would meander along that creek going towards the church and tie into that orange line that was shown on the drawing. As far as connecting to Lafayette Circle, that's desirable. And ideally, if the adjoining property ever is redeveloped, which everything will eventually be redeveloped, but if it gets redeveloped, that owner, whoever the new owner is, maybe they'd be more receptive to a shared pathway easement that allows for a wider connection to the creek area. Right now, the current owner isn't interested in it, which is why they need to build that 10-foot wall, 10-foot tall CMU wall. If they were interested in it and they could have been convinced to put the pathway in, then they wouldn't have needed the CMU wall as part of this, because then the fire department would have been happier with it. At least that's my understanding of the situation there.
And the CMU wall, so your understanding is the CMU wall is necessitated by the possibility that the owner of 101 Lafayette Circle could build up closer to the property line, so that we need a fire separation there, or?
I don't know the specifics of that. I just remember hearing somewhere along the lines that they had tried to make it so that they could have a shared pathway connection in that area that would straddle both properties. And my understanding was that the fire department was receptive to that, but the owner of the adjacent property was not. Nancy, feel free to jump in and tell me if I got that all wrong.
That's what I understand too.
Okay, maybe we can ask the applicant more about that. Okay, any other questions? And then just to clarify, so we're sort of we want to think about it maybe in two separate pieces. There's any potential linkages back from the right of way, and then there's the pathway going along the creek. And because this is the last parcel in this section of creek, any pathway on the adjacent parcels to the north would sort of dead end into the proposed deck. Okay. And then there was some discussion in the staff report about, Matt, you were trying to figure out whether the deck was considered landscaping or not. And was that to see if it was allowed within the creek setback?
Yeah, a couple of people had commented that they were concerned that that was not entirely a reasonable interpretation of the creek setback language, and that we should require the applicant to go through the creek setback exception process in order to build the deck within the creek setback zone. And in talking to the applicant, he has agreed to do that. So we're moving forward with doing the creek setback exception for the deck.
Okay. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. So at this time, we will go to the applicant if they desire to make a presentation.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Brian Griggs. I am the applicant. I also have Paul and Cullen from Forum 4 Architects on the line in case there's specific questions. Although I know the purview of this isn't necessarily specifically about design, I just wanted to make sure they were available. By means of background, we went to the design review first in April of 2019, so about 18 months ago. Prior to that, we worked with staff trying to make sure that we could bring a project forward that had a lot of input from design review. We had 3 study sessions. And as Nancy said, we've had 2 formal reviews in the last 45 days or so. And we've gone back and forth as far as making sure we could build a project that candidly penciled. It's an expensive project because it's in the AE and AO flood zones. We had to build podium parking because of the chance that there could be flooding of the site. And so we ended up having to try and figure out if we could.
Mr. Griggs, we're not catching
put enough
every.
units on it that we could we reduced the unit count from 23 down to 20 recently.
Mr.
Sorry, you hear me now?
Yes.
You there?
Yeah, it was just
Sorry, maybe I'll
a
talk
little
slower.
choppy on your end. Yeah, I just want to. We probably. I don't think we heard every word on the last sentence or so.
Okay. Well, the upshot is I wanted to get a project approved that both aesthetically could fit within the neighborhood, but also could economically be built. And so the last big move we made was to pull the upper 2 units back substantially from the street. I'm a 38-year resident of this town. I work about 100 yards from this site, and I've worked down there for 15 years. And so it's really been, I think, a fairly collaborative process with both staff, with the city engineer relative to the creek setback, and also with design review. And I think we've done a good job at responding to the input that we've received along the lines. I think that the end project is, I consider it to be a nice piece of art. And it's something that, with the proximity to BART and downtown, we're hoping that, kind of that missing middle market might be able to not have cars or use some sort of ride share. And actually, we do have the ability to increase the car count if necessary. There was concerns about some of the adjacent property owners about the street parking availability. But because we've raised the podium up a couple of feet, we can put parking lifts in it. And, I think the questions you had about the fire exit and the 10-foot CMU wall, as Matt said, and I think as Nancy said, Mr. Moore next door has been cooperative. I think he's concerned about his ability to develop. We had proposed a 10-foot wide kind of mutual easement that we would both be able to exit through. If you look at the design, the rear exit of the building does need to have a rated corridor, and the county requires that to be a 10-foot non-combustible exit. And that's what that 10-foot CMU wall is all about. We didn't want it, but respecting Mr. Moore's, rights as an adjacent property owner and his tenants, we've agreed to do it. As far as the creek, I think Matt and Nancy have hit it pretty spot on. We'd like to embellish the creeks. The creek bank, I think, could be great. It's a big part of what this city is. It's kind of the open space. We are at the southern reach or the end of it. We have been willing to make our deck accessible when the adjacent properties in the creek along the bank are developed. Do I think that's going to happen in the next 5 years? No, I hope it happens in the next 10 to 15 years, but this will be a perpetual right for the city to access the property. As far as the conditions of approval that are proposed tonight, Nancy did clarify the one condition which has to do with the stuccoing of the wall. I didn't want to articulate the wall because we really can't move the wall because it's right up against the property line. But Mr. Moore requested, and we've agreed to put stucco on his side of the wall. He's going to put some foliage that's going to grow up on the stucco. And then the condition relative to the spring and easement, I do want to clarify that is just along the creek bank. We have not approached the fire department about the possibility of having direct access to Huff, in this case, or Lafayette Circle at that intersection. It would severely impact, if not prevent, the project from going forward, candidly, just because of the uncertainty for the residents. And, these are eventually going to be sold as condominiums. So I think property owners would have a pretty high level of concern about the public coming down a pretty narrow corridor and then being able to stay on the deck. So I'm amenable to the spring and easement, it's been called. I do want to make sure that we understand that there's got to be, the normal kind of commercially reasonable indemnities and hold harmless, that if there was to be some sort of misuse of the deck, loud noises, etc., that the city's going to come in at our request or the resident's request. I probably won't own the units at that point in time. And, they'll be subject, reasonable rules and regulations for it. Then the other aspect that I'm asking for in that condition is that when the city does make this public, that the city would agree to make the security of the garage the same as it will be from day one, which is, in essence, we have a secure garage, we have a secure entry to the building. And so when the public's able to access the rear deck, right now there's not going to be security on the back because you really can't get there. But if it does become public and becomes used, it's just a matter of putting in a couple of gates and such. I think that'll secure the residents from that. So that's the upshot. Paul, if the changes we moved along the front, we unfortunately had to change landscape architects because my longtime friend Pam Winthrop, who I think has been a long-time resident of this town, had a medical condition and could no longer continue. So the new architect actually looked at the plans, suggested a western redbud, which would grow up against the building, and I think it meets the intent of the design review, as Nancy showed in those new pictures you got. I'm sorry, Nancy, I just got those to you this afternoon, but they just came through. So I'm open for questions. If anyone wants to ask Paul or Cullen any questions, fire away.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner?
I have one.
Ron
Huff.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, sure, go ahead.
Yes. As to the two gates that were just mentioned by the applicant, I want to be certain I understand their location. I know they're security gates. Would those be gates that would preclude access directly from Huff, where I know there is no public access, or would those be gates paralleling the creek?
I'm envisioning in the future, when the deck becomes public, they would be installed at the creek side. And Colin, I don't know if you or Paul could pull it up, because initially the decks and security will be at the Huff side. So when you're exiting that fire rated corridor, the public or anyone who wants to enter the property, it'll be a one-way gate to exit only. We do have a proposed garage fence or garage door that would open for the residents. But in the back, as Colin's showing right now, for both accessibility purposes and for the residents, they would be able to go directly onto the deck in the rear without having to go through a security gate.
Right, but in terms of people using this proposed springing easement and coming parallel along the creek, they would not be confronted by a gate?
No, they would not. I'm sorry for yeah. So I'm envisioning the gate being perpendicular. Colin, if you could show it to those two storage units that access the upper lot line, right where Colin's cursor is now, and then the one with the arrow where it says creek setback. No, they would have unimpeded access.
Okay. I thank you for that clarification, and I have no problem with that.
Any other questions about the creek or the springing easement? I'm scrolling through. So, Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I flipped through the geotech report and I didn't see. I probably just missed it. I just want to make sure that any of the back part of the building and or the deck area was addressed in the geotech, because I saw Matt's comments to Nancy regarding how steep the creek bank is, and I just want to make sure that was addressed in the geotech.
Matt, do you want to answer it, or do you want me to?
Either one. I'll let you answer it. It's your project. If you need me to jump in, let me know.
Well, the structure itself is outside of the setback. There is comment in the geotech report, more or less a disclaimer, I think, that said if there was to be increased erosion, that potentially that would require some sort of a retaining wall. I don't remember which page specifically it's on, but it does reference that if there were to be, the geotech engineer did not indicate concern about it. In fact, he issued a letter as part of the creek setback application just relative to the deck. One thing that is important, and the reason I think there was a little bit of ambiguity on whether the deck qualified or not as landscaping is the redwood trees there have very low roots, and so we're not even going to be able to do any sort of piers. It's all going to be deck blocks. The arborist report restricts us to no more than 6 inches of disruption into the dirt. So it'll be, a deck that you very often see in residences that sits more or less on grade.
Okay. Thanks. That answers my question. So basically, because the building footprint's outside the creek structure setback, I shouldn't expect to see anything relative to the foundation and the geotech because the foundation is not within it. So sometimes when the building footprint's within the creek structure setback, the geotech over designs, if you will, or super fortifies the foundation because it's within the setback. So that explains it. That's why I didn't see anything specific to the foundation. So thank you.
Yep.
Any member Gilman?
So this discussion of a shallow deck footing made me want to ask if the geotech report discusses whether the soils there are expansive. Matt, would you happen to recall that? Because if that's the case, those footings are probably going to be moving up and down a bit. And, we want to provide a safe experience both for residents and the future public. So I think that's something that should be looked into a little more.
I believe he did indicate that the soils in the area are expansive, but in his letter that he submitted for the construction of the deck in the creek setback area, he did indicate that there we go, that the condition of the soils underneath the deck would not pose a problem for the deck itself. Wouldn't be a hazard to persons or property.
Okay.
I don't really understand that. I was assuming, and I just skimmed the geotech report to look at the types of foundations that they recommended, and I was assuming that one of those types would be used at the deck as well. Especially, it seems like so close to a creek bank where things are sort of slowly sliding into the creek or being eroded, that you would want to.
I think the principal concern was if you drilled piers into the soil to provide, a really robust foundation for the deck, that you would run the risk of doing some significant damage to the oak trees that are adjacent to the creek behind the property. So I think that's what they were trying to avoid doing, is damaging the trees.
Well,
And that's,
didn't it talk about a mat slab? I actually didn't see, maybe it was in their pier and grade beam system, but I saw the mat slab. Go ahead, Mr. Griggs.
yeah, for the structure, it's definitely a mat slab. It's very thick and the structure's not going to move. For the deck, we actually had initially proposed some DG or something that was more on grade, but the concern was to properly install that, we'd have to excavate as much as 18 inches. And so with having some of the roots at the surface, that's how we kind of defaulted to this deck above the surface, more or less. I think we anticipate there will be some movement, but I think you'll find the specifications will be as these deck pier blocks will be 3 foot on center, 4 foot on center, something to try and at least give us some of the ability to not have to, because even before the city takes over the property or has access to the property, I don't want that deck to be moving any more than anyone else. So we'll do the best we can do given the constraints we have.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason?
Can I touch on the deck and Commissioner Heising's comment? First of all, regarding the structure itself, the mat slab is the most logical way to go. There are code sections about footing depths at top of slope and how far back you have to go and things like that. Being adjacent to the creek, the big thing is water infiltration if you do piers. Regarding the deck, the big concern isn't the deck itself. It's just a wood deck. They can always replace it. The big concern is that with the expanse of soil, you'll get enough movement so that it violates ADA standards, because this will be a public deck. And, you know, it will move. It's a wood deck on pier blocks, and you'll just have a certain degree of maintenance that you will have over the lifetime of the deck.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Mason. I think I saw Vice Chair Farsan.
Thank you. Mr. Griggs, can you explain the potential for future parking lifts?
Yeah, no, we don't know, again, being so close to BART and hoping that this is going to be more or less a TOD development, we don't want to necessarily encourage people to have cars. And the lifts have been set up so there'll be independent lifts, and theoretically, if these are sold as condominiums, which we are putting a map on it, individual owners would have the right to potentially put a lift into their own assigned stall. We didn't feel that necessarily putting in 22 lifts that encourages driving. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that the less cars we have on the road, the better for everyone. So if, you know, a lot of families, especially I think in these, you know, close locations to public transit, will get by with one car, even if there's, you know, 2 adults and even a child in some cases. These are not going to be 3 and 4 or 5 person families. We don't envision living in these units.
That's helpful, and I'm also in favor of fewer cars, so that would be great. So I'm just trying to, so it would be the option would be for the owner to put in the lift themselves.
Correct.
Okay, so there is no triggering point for the city or anyone else to say, you need to go ahead and put in lifts because all of these cars are now parking outside and they shouldn't be. I'm just trying to get that kind of sense. So right now, as I understand it, it's up to the right is given to the potential owner to, at their cost, put in a lift if necessary.
Yeah, I don't think if we do end up selling these as condos, and I haven't fully decided if it's going to happen day 1 or it's going to happen, you know, starting in year 5 or 6. I think to burden a potential buyer with the obligation to put a lift in is probably something that would not be, you know, saleable in the market, candidly.
Yeah.
But I think having the ability for someone to put it in for their lifestyle is really, you know, and I think the issue about congestion in the streets and such, you know, we have 20 units, and if we decide to sell them and the first 10 sell and then there's suddenly a big parking problem, we're not going to sell the other 10. And so, you know, I think it's not, it'll evolve over time, but, you know, giving the city the lever to suddenly put the obligation on the individual homeowner, in my case, the developer, to put those lifts in is something that I wanted to avoid.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Radnich?
Yeah, Mr. Griggs, just so I'm understanding you correctly, did you say that even though these are, some of these, majority of them, 14, are 3-bedroom units, that you don't anticipate 3 to 5 family member families living there? Is that what you were saying?
I do, simply because having 4 kids of my own, actually I have 7 I recently remarried. Kids like space, kids like being outside. And I think if you get to a family of 4 or a family of 5, ideally you're going to be able to afford, even when the prices are so high, a single family residence where we have yards. The one thing we're really restricted on is we don't have much open space. We were able to put some open space up on the roof for the deck. And then we have this small deck in the back. We envision that the COVID situation is going to continue. I hope it doesn't continue too long, but, you know, work from home, that sort of thing, for although they're approved as 3-bedroom units, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a real push to have one of them be an office or something other than having big families in here. I haven't seen big families per se in these infill units pretty much everywhere that I've explored it. But I'm not an expert, I'll tell you that right away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I had a few. Could you go over the fire access or how the proposal meets the fire department's comments and requirements?
Yeah, Paul, do you want to jump on that? Because we've met with Contra Costa Fire 3 times now. Do you want to jump in, Paul, from a code technical standpoint real quick?
And we got the letter from the fire department and it had a lot of questions and issues, but then we didn't get a response to all of those things.
Yeah, we talked to Mr. Shush after that.
Yeah, I wasn't in the final conversation there, Brian, but I mean, generally,
Clarify.
Sorry, Brian, your audio is a little choppy again. Okay.
Oh, was that Paul's or mine?
No, that was yours.
Hey, Colin, will you pull up the plan so we can? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling that up right now. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can talk through some of it. So one of the comments we got from the fire department is they require 150-foot lay of the hose. And given that we only have access on this side of the building, we're going to provide a wet standpipe here along stair number 2 and also here on the southern side. So if a fire does occur, they can connect their hoses here and have 150-foot access all around the building. The other way they plan on accessing this building is through the front. We have aerial access up to the front of the building. So if I take you to the front side, actually the renderings might be better. Luckily, this electrical pole ends right where our building begins, and a fire truck can pull up, use their aerial access, and get onto the flat roof either here or over here. As we talked about on the northern side of the building, part of our exit discharge system or egress is the court. And given that the code prescribes that your egress court cannot be any less than 10 feet in width, given that this is less than 10 feet, we have our 1 hour rated CMU wall for a height of 10 feet. Unless hopefully the neighbor would like to do a joint easement. Brian, can you remember what other things the fire department had?
No, we talked to them about how the aerial access would occur and, with the roof itself. They want where the little pop-ups are in the penthouse to have a little stair that would enable them to run with their fire hose kind of up over the top. The last thing I want to do is to get a building to go through the city and then suddenly hit big roadblocks at the fire department, which is most important. So we've tried to address all these in what we're presenting tonight.
Sure, and I was mostly curious about the ground level thing. So if with the CMU wall along the north side, if that pathway, which is considered a court, the width of it was increased to 10 feet, then that would no longer necessitate the CMU wall.
Correct.
Okay. And then why is the CMU? Go ahead. Sorry,
So it goes from our edge of our building to the property line. So if we had the joint easement, that line goes away.
Okay. And then why is the CMU wall not required on the other long property line?
We're not exiting from that side. It's the stair that's causing the issue.
Okay.
The front exit
lobby.
So here on the south side of the building, as you come down the stairs, this is our egress court, which opens up to the public way. Whereas when you open this door, you enter to a corridor, essentially.
Got it. Okay. And then the 2 locations, from what I could tell, the 2 locations where there's the most, where the setback from the property line is the least, or the most encroachment into what would be the required setback, seem to be at 2 bedrooms, and it looked like it's about 3 foot 3 inches from the property line. They're windows. How is that allowed under the code?
So the code prescribes, based on your distance from your property line, you're allowed to have a percentage of openness in your facade. And so between, I believe, 0 and 5 feet, you're allowed to have 15% open. So if we go to the elevations, you'll notice here where our building is closest to the property line, there's very few windows or openings. Whereas as we step further back, there's more glazing.
Okay.
Cullen, will you show how the building's oriented on the upper two floors at, at an angle? That might help to maybe show the second floor plan.
So here's our second floor plan. And you see it tapers along the trapezoidal site. And after we get past these first two bedrooms, it steps back into balcony space. And it comes back out again.
Okay.
So we've tried not to make it a straight vertical wall for the neighbors on either side, because we have decks on the south side also.
Right. And I saw that, and I appreciate that. I think that's a good way to pull the building back along there. I was just, the 3-foot 3-inch distance from the bedroom windows to the property line concerns me, because there's a potential that your neighbor on either side could want to build a similar project. And if they did something, let's say they did something that's just like your project, and we'd have 2 bedroom windows 6 foot 6 inches apart.
That's pretty close.
Yeah. Okay. And then I had a question about, so it looks like you've already started to incorporate the Design Review Commission's last comments, but I saw a number of comments in the landscape consultants letter that didn't seem like they had been picked up yet. Are you intending to pick those up?
I don't remember them specifically. I think some of them were more general in nature about the amount of open space and such. There were some issues about trees. She had wanted us to try and remove trees that weren't on our property. And I let Nancy know that I have no rights to remove trees on a neighbor's property. We did apply for, which I hadn't realized originally, that there were some protected trees. And so I made that application about 3 weeks ago. And I think relative to specific comments about, I think there was maybe a comment about the oak trees in the back. And this is something I've talked to Matt about recently. Those oak trees are definitely leaning towards the creek. And I think it's an issue that, having been in this town for so long, oak trees are pretty sacred to both the town and to me and everyone else. And so to the extent that we can maintain them, even if it's for 10 years or 15 or 20 years or 5 years, I think we should maintain them as opposed to proactively taking them out. Unless it becomes a health and safety issue, in which case, obviously, we take them out.
Okay.
But there's specific comments that
the comment that stuck out to me were the comments regarding the roof deck. And I think they were suggesting that the river rock area be decreased and then more of the vegetation be sort of pulled out away from the building to create outdoor space. And that, seems like a very, that's up to how you want to use the roof deck. But the thought that occurred to me, I think everyone's probably in agreement that the amount of planting on the site is less than desirable because of the built out nature. And I just wondered if maybe, and I didn't see a landscape plan for the roof deck, if there's an opportunity to bring some of the planting to the edge of the roof deck and maybe have some potted trees so that there's more greenery visible from the public right of way.
Yeah, no, we actually had that discussion with our new landscape architect last week. And so we, certainly that's going to be the gathering space. And so for us to soften that is something that we want to do.
Okay.
I can't be any more specific than when I do decide to sell these buildings, the building's going to be nice, expensive to build. Whatever we do on the roof is going to be commensurate with that. I'm not going to end up for the last 5% of this project and decide not to put more landscaping up there.
Okay. Okay, and I think my last question was just about, there's a few units where I know units are going to sell like hotcakes no matter. This is a very nice project too, so I know that they'll definitely be marketable. But there was 3 units where the living space looked like 8 to 9 feet wide, and I was just wondering about the usability of that. And then you mentioned having, some people will purchase the units and then use a bedroom as an office space. I saw a couple units that had a desk office area already in the design, and I was wondering if that's something that you looked at trying to have in all of the units. We've seen that on other projects, and it seems like it really enhances this type of living unit.
We haven't refined the units bluntly, and Paul and I have gone back and forth. How many times, Paul? About a dozen on kind of the interior layouts of these.
Yes.
So that we will probably, change some things up until the time we file. But I do think, we really wanted to try and do the best we could do with a large building.
Your audio is getting choppy again.
The colors and sorry, that's wireless. As
Okay.
far as the interiors, we have not refined them.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions I had. Does anyone else have anything that occurred to them? Commissioner Mason?
One just last minor thing, as you develop the landscape architectural plans for the roof deck, this is more for the architects, please bear in mind that depending upon the jurisdictions and the size of the planters, they may interpret the required railing height as 42 inches above a standing surface if there's a large roof deck adjacent to it, which would require back through design review and appearance and stuff like that. So I'm just letting you know to be careful with that.
Yeah, I think we already have 42-inch guardrails everywhere.
We do.
Yeah.
Mr. Radnich?
Yeah, so if I were a resident to the north, or if I were a resident interested in purchasing one of the units, I'd be a little concerned about the balconies on the north side on the second, so level 2, which is the first floor of housing. So can you just walk us through maybe things you guys looked at in terms of privacy for both the adjacent building to the north, but also for your future residents? Like in your, determination of where you place the balconies? Does that make sense?
I can tell you from my opinion, when we met with Mr. Moore, and we've had probably a dozen conversations with he and his wife, and he was concerned about the burn wall of a 3-4 story building. And so when we
Mr. Griggs, your audio is sort of choppy again.
Oh, I think he's frozen.
Hey, Paul, do you want to try it?
You're there?
Do you want to try it, Paul?
Oh, you're back now.
Yeah, I'm here. My stuff.
And
Yeah,
it might help if you turn off your video, that might help.
You want to answer it, Paul?
Yeah, I was trying to pick up on what you were saying, but in meeting with the neighbor, I mean, one of the important things was that we, one of the reasons that we angled the building the way we did along the side yard was to help get that distance as much as we could. I mean, obviously the balconies sort of need to be along that edge because of the living rooms and the bedrooms all, face out that direction. His concern too was to, provide as much light to his units as well, which is why we pulled back as much as we could. His building actually ends long before ours does at the very end, where we're the tightest to the property line. So it's in the area of the middle where we've got the pullback that it sort of helps minimize as much as possible the impact to his units.
Okay.
So
thanks.
the other thing we were actually the reason we were interested in the easement between the two properties as well is we were hoping to do some nice planting between the two properties. But again, we weren't successful with the neighbor in getting that, but that was another reason we wanted that easement as well.
Okay, thank you.
Did you, just referring to the easement with the easement that was desired with the neighbor, when you spoke with them about the easement, did you also talk about sort of letting your open spaces at the rear of your properties be open to each other. That was something that I think is mentioned in the Creeks plan, or just the idea of, you know, a communal
We
open
did
space.
We didn't get to that point because we didn't get past the first point, which was,
Okay.
let's try and, you know, share, because his concern or their concern was if they redevelop, would this be restrictive? And even though we showed them it wouldn't be, because they'd have to have the same kind of exiting, it was just, there was more of a concern than openness.
Okay. Back to the fire department requirements, just out of curiosity. So if the neighbor at, let's say 101 Lafayette Circle wanted to build the exact same building that you're building, would they be able to? Would they be allowed to have windows 6 foot 6 inches from your windows? What would be the do you know what the?
Yeah, I mean, each property has its own requirement per its distance to the property line. So it doesn't really matter what the distance is from, you know, from our building line to our property line and theirs to theirs. It's each property is an independent analysis.
But we wouldn't limit their ability to do it.
They would be just following the code, and their distance back from the property line would be driving what they do.
Yeah, so I think that 15% of the surface area within 5 feet or whatever Colin had said a minute ago would apply to them also.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, so we are ready to open public comment on this item.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please use your raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, and we can admit you as a speaker. And if you're calling in, please use *9. I don't see any hands raised. Oh, there we go. Brian Moore would like to speak. Hi, Brian, you're in the meeting if you'd like to unmute and make your comment.
And Brian, if you wouldn't mind stating your address, I think we have your name, and then you have 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
Yeah, Brian Moore, Brian and Deanna Moore, 101 Lafayette Circle.
Okay.
We've talked to, Brian throughout this process, and during the whole process, we've indicated, this is obviously impacting our building significantly. And we made that pretty clear, and that I think you've picked up on the fact that the setbacks are pretty close. We want to be certain that we'd be able to do the same thing in the future if we ever decided to do that, which, we do not have those plans. But we've also said all the way out through the process that it would be better if this was pushed as far south as possible, because there is a driveway over there that is an access driveway that will never be built on. But, I don't know the ramifications of that. And, with the current situation with state requirements, we've just kind of felt like our hands are tied. So, and then on the wall, we've just kind of, there's obviously many, many issues with that. But we feel that we're looking at a wall no matter what, based on what our current position is. So literally a wall 4 feet back from where it's going to be when this thing is 48 feet in height. There's no benefit to us to not having the wall per se, from a view standpoint. So again, we've always been concerned with light. That's been our biggest issue. Our tenants there have always said that these are bright and light apartments, and that's no longer going to be the case. So I don't think not having that wall is really going to change that for us. So that's part of our position. But our position all along was we would prefer something pushed back as far as possible, and retain as much light as we possibly could. But it appears that probably will not be the case. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions for the speaker? Okay. Thank you for your comments.
So again, if you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function. I do not see any other raised hands.
Okay, so this time we'll close public comment and the applicant has 5 more minutes to share anything or respond to public comment if you'd like.
No, I think Mr. Moore, as I said earlier, has been very respectful about what we're doing, understanding. I think, although he didn't say it this time, he said it last time, we've actually, I think, worked pretty well together with what we've tried to do to minimize the impact, knowing the impact would be substantial. But any infill development, I think, will have that. And, you know, I'm pleased with what we've been able to produce as far as the aesthetics of it. That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we will bring it back to the commission and the Creeks Committee now. We can, I don't know how many comments people have, but we can go, let's go ahead and start with the Creeks Committee. Raise your hand if you have anything you want to, any comments you want to share related to the creek. Committee Member Gilman.
Yeah, so I have a couple of comments on the proposed conditions of approval that pertain somewhat to the creeks. The first one is number 13, which is about executing and recording the springing easement. I realize the language is pretty general for that. It doesn't really talk about the conditions in which the easement would be sprung. It doesn't talk about exactly what area would be recorded, the process for that. But overall, I guess I could accept most of it because we really don't exactly know when it would happen, what it's going to look like. It's conditioned upon the property to the north and further, hopefully further north than that, granting the same kind of easement. But my one specific comment, just to tighten it up, would be to say, instead of public access to the rear deck, to say public access to and over the rear deck, just so that it's not misunderstood that, you know, I think the intent is that the deck would become public. So it's just a little bit of word smithing to make sure there's no misunderstandings in the future. And then my other comment is on the proposed condition number 42, which is about the what's called remedial vegetation management. Many of you know that one of the overarching goals of the Downtown Creek Plan is to remove invasive vegetation and replace it with native vegetation or riparian native vegetation. So I think overall that condition addresses that. In the second line, it talks about that this work would be under the direction of the Public Works Division, but I think, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this really falls within his bailiwick, the Engineering Division. And then I would say to remove invasive species, comma, promote creek bank stabilization and revegetate the area with riparian native species.
Okay, I'm counting on staff to have jotted down all of your comments. Can you, I don't know if, are you looking, what were the numbers of the conditions of approval again?
The first one was 13.
42.
13.
And the second one was 42.
Are you looking at the version that was in the packet for tonight?
Yes.
If you do Control F and type in the number, it'll come up.
Or what you can do, Christina, if you're looking at the 7A attachment, it's on page 20.
Oh, okay.
And then you go down to page 30 of that. That's where you'll see it.
Okay, I got it. I got it.
Far
Okay.
more helpful than Control F. Far more specific as well.
Okay, any other comments on the creek? Okay. So we'll go to the Planning Commission. Does anyone want to share any comments? We can go down the row or you can raise hands. We'll just raise hands. I don't put anybody on the spot. I saw Commissioner Maggio.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think we're all pretty well versed in California housing law at this point, and perhaps what's ideal for adjacent property owners is not what gets approved or certainly what's built. But there's a lot of good news about this project. Even though it does exceed the floor area maximums on the lower levels, it is quite a bit stepped back on the upper levels. It is in compliance with the DSP. It conforms with the retail district, the general plan housing element, and also the growth management element with regard to infill housing. So those are all good things going for this project. It's walkable, close to transportation, well suited for an infill project. The close to the sidewalk design is what we specified back in 2012 for design in this area. And I mean, we're working on really utilizing the creek, certainly for views now and perhaps for more use later. Trying to decide what makes sense for this down creek plan. And I think the lack of specificity is a lot to do with we don't know exactly what we're planning at this moment. Couple concerns. I think if we can soften the landscape around this architecture, I think it would be helpful for this building and for the street appeal and also for the neighbors. So I'd recommend we work on that. Parking, we're trying to encourage people to have fewer cars and more public transportation. COVID has kind of put a wrench in that for us right now. People are hesitant to do that. I know I'm walking a lot, but so having the opportunity to increase the parking down the road is, I think, a really good option. And Brian talked about that earlier, so that remains. So I think there's some flexibility, but overall, I think this is a good project.
Thank you, Commissioner Maggio. Commissioner Mason?
I also like this project. I think, we've been seeing a nice diversity of design approaches in this area. I'm fine with the reduced parking. I know San Francisco is already going that direction where they actually have maximum parking ratios, because the thought is if you don't give them a place to park, they won't have cars. The one thing that I would like to see is just set up the parking for future car charging. I mean, it probably isn't much more than running conduit down there in the PT slab, but over the 50-year lifespan of this project, I can see a greater need, and in multi-unit housing that always seems to fall short.
Vice Chair Farsan?
Thank you. I like the project. I like the design. I'm impressed that they took that long to work with design review, tried to work with the neighbors, etc. I think there are things, as Commissioner Maggio said, we probably wouldn't like if we had more more choices, but I think the applicant has done well. The team has done well here. Some of the notes that I had here, I like the concept of additional parking, but I will say, I think if you're leaving it to a property owner to pay for a lift, good luck and Godspeed to that, because those are expensive. I know about them from San Francisco, but at least the option is there. I wish more people in that area would be walking, but in my life, the only two cities that I've been in America where people don't get cars are San Francisco and New York. Even other big cities, they still have cars. I don't know what it is, even if they're close to everything. So I hope the case is people will walk to BART, will go to restaurants, will go to stores. That's what we're shooting for. And I think developer has done a really good job of that. Following on to what Commissioner Mason said, I think car charging would be essential here, especially from the packet. The applicant is trying to steer this towards millennials. I think they will have electric cars, etc. So I think that would be an incentive to people to be there, and it's good for the environment, sustainability. So again, there are some other issues if we had more power, so to speak, but I like the project. I'm glad we're having more housing. I think the location is great for everything we're shooting for. So I'm in favor.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Farsan, and thank you, Commissioner Mason, for your earlier comments. Commissioner Radnich?
Yeah, I'll just say, while I don't disagree with the other commissioners, I do understand the project. It's just, I find it extremely frustrating that there's waivers for height, setback, open space, parking, landscaping, building design, and a concession, but I understand and I can make the findings, even though I find that part frustrating. And I do feel it's going to look like a giant kind of block that feels squeezed onto a site. But again, I understand state law and I understand the intent of their design and their project.
Thank you, Commissioner Radnich. Commissioner Heising, did you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would agree with many of the other commissioners' comments, and I would echo, I think Commissioner Maggio put it well. I would echo her comments. And I too think it's good to have this additional housing in the downtown. It's close to BART, it's walkable to the downtown, it's walkable to all the amenities downtown, restaurants, dry cleaning, grocery stores. So I think it's a good location. And I also like particularly the easement, preserving the ability in the future for possible connection to a Creeks Trail. But understand that that might not be appropriate right now, but at least we have the opportunity in the future. So having said that, I'm supportive of the project.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Heising. Sarah, could you remind us on the parking what the rules are for the street parking in the area? I know there's meters. Are those, do you know offhand what the hours are?
That's a great question. So I think that they're 9 to 6 every day.
Okay. And you think that's probably pretty consistent along Lafayette Circle, and then
I think it's 7. I just paid a meter last night, so I think it's 7.
Till 7. Okay.
All of the street parking should be the same timeframes. That's not necessarily the case for all the off-street parking, since some of those are private lots.
Okay. And when I know the parking study is a little bit, and it's a little bit out, well, maybe not. Well, now things are completely different with COVID, but when we did the parking study, so I mean, most of the businesses are closed there by 7 p.m., but the restaurants are still open. When we did the parking study, was there ample parking for the restaurant uses in the evening hours?
I believe this was one of the sort of more impacted areas, but I can try and pull it up if that's of value.
I mean, I asked because I think for the project itself, I agree that we want to set things up in a way that encourages less car use and, you know, maybe single vehicle ownership per unit. And if the owners or the residents of the project aren't feeling like the parking's, you know, adequate, then they have this option of installing the lifts, which is great. I just want to make sure that doesn't have a negative impact on the surrounding area. So I guess if it's easy to pull it up, Sarah.
Oh yeah, I'll take a look.
So I appreciate all of the comments from the other commissioners and the committee members. I agree that it's a good project and a good location. I like the design and I appreciate the willingness to work with the Design Review Commission. I thought they had some really good input too. I think the units are nice and they're going to be very desirable, especially as some of the details get worked out. I appreciate the applicant's willingness to look at the landscape consultant's comments, because I do think that if we can add some more greenery that's visible from the right of way, that will go a long way to making up for the open space that's not there on the ground floor. Although at the same time, I do think that the step back works really well. So I'm actually not so sure about how much that will be visible. But I think, yeah, anything that can be done to add greenery is a plus, and I feel comfortable with the height because of the step back and the way that the massing has been designed. The one I wanted to echo Commissioner Radnich's comments too, that I felt like there are a lot of waivers requested on this project, and the setbacks are the waiver that are particularly concerning to me. I am by no means up to being knowledgeable about the current fire code, but I saw Commissioner Sim referenced that with this design, we'll essentially have a zero lot line building. But my assumption is that it's almost better to have a zero lot line building, that when you set it back and you have openings, that may end up impacting the neighboring property. And just the idea of having the 2-bedroom windows 6 foot 6 inches apart, and that's the size of someone's, you know, sofa, seems really uncomfortable. So I want to, the thought that came into my mind when I realized that could be the case here, was that I would want to make sure that we're not creating a sort of first come first serve type of situation where one property is coming in and developing, and then you know, that impacts the ability of the adjacent property owner to develop in the same way. And I guess I'm not totally clear if that's the case here or not. But I also understand the density bonus law and the limitations that it puts on our discretionary review. So all in all, I think it's a good project. And I like the deck on the back, if I didn't say that already. But it is close to the property line.
So I did find the parking maps, and it looks like, I'm happy to share my screen. It looks like it's more impacted and earlier in the morning. Let's see here. So the on-street parking here, you can see, so this is a Saturday at 10 a.m. And so the red lines ultimately mean that it was over the 85% occupancy that we're after. And then this is 12 p.m. on a Saturday, and it gets a little lighter at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. 6 p.m. is heavy again. And then 8 p.m. it kind of opens up again. And then a Wednesday at 9, Wednesday at noon is impacted. Wednesday at 3, less so. So it's pretty much sort of like the lunch and dinner hours are a bit more impacted.
And the meters, are there meters along this section? You said
There are meters, yes.
And what's the time frame? 2 hours?
2 hours. Mhm.
Okay.
Sarah, are you sure that the meters extend that far down? Because I thought they stopped prior to the site.
Oh no, there are definitely parking meters there. I can tell you, I can guarantee it. I was just there. There are meters at 101 Lafayette Circle. There are 2 of them right in front. And then they keep going a little bit further. They're 9 to 6 there.
No, I know there's meters on the Lafayette Circle side. Don't remember them on the side of the street at this project.
I think they go down as far as maybe the art room.
The art room is before this project, closer to, yeah.
Correct.
So that's what I thought. I didn't remember seeing it in front of this project.
So if their meters stop there, I'm trying to visualize going further down Huff toward Brook Street. Is there street parking there? It gets sort of narrow. I guess there is, but I don't know. What are the,
there is street parking along Huff.
and what are the rules?
I want to say actually one side might be a red curb, but the other side is there's street parking.
And is it limited? Is it limited to 2 hours, or do you know what the rules are?
I think it is also limited to 2 hours. Yes.
With is there a neighborhood permit program?
Let me check on that one. I don't know if that street particularly has it.
Okay, Commissioner Radnich, did you have a comment?
So on Google Earth, this says it's 2020. It seems to be 2 hour parking on this side of the street at the property. And across the street, I don't see any meters directly across from this project. It also has 2 hour parking signs, but that's just according to Google Earth 2020. So I guess I have a question, Chair. Just so parking obviously is something that we're talking about. And maybe Sarah, this is a question for you, or maybe Chair, what would trigger, is there a definitive trigger that we can condition that would require the condominium to build the additional, the parking lift that they could build? Is there a traceable trigger or trackable trigger?
Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the concessions they're asking for? Yes, is the reductions.
Yeah, waiver from parking quantity. Yes.
Okay.
No, sorry. What I'm talking about is, I thought, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought that I do understand that they're requesting a parking waiver, but I thought that the project, in addition to the parking spaces they are providing, is also making accommodations for a potential future parking system, or is that not the case?
I believe that's the case, but it's sort of at the discretion, their discretion. It wouldn't be the city's discretion.
Right. Okay. So is there anything written into the project that, would be up to, like, is there a cutoff that the condominium would look at? Or is it just that if enough, of their members complain that there's not enough parking for their vehicles, then the project itself, after it's built and the condominiums are sold off, they would need to figure it out on their own. Is that what it kind of is?
Mr. Griggs, if you want to answer that question, you can.
Sure. No, the waiver we're requesting is to reduce the minimum number required. As far as the flexibility down the line, as I said to the earlier question, I'm concerned, I think just practically speaking, if I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for a condominium and I can't park there, and this is my home, for $18,000 to $20,000 for a parking lift, to have value created, and at least intuitively, I'm going to probably put the lift in. Do I think that all 20 homeowners will do it? I doubt it. I think it's really going to be just more convenience in the individuals that do it. I mean, if someone wants to drive around for 15 minutes like you might in San Francisco or somewhere else to try and find a surface parking stall on the street that you have to be out of by 10 in the morning because of the meters that go on, that could happen. But I think eventually it's just going to be as the ownership evolves and the life, if you have, both of you have a car and you only have one designated stall, there's going to be a natural. What I want to do is give flexibility for the individual homeowner to make that decision down the line.
Okay, thanks. So I wasn't understanding that before. So if I'm just understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that individuals could do it. Not everybody in the condominium association has to agree. And for an individual, okay, it'd be $18,000, $20,000 range to convert their spot to a double spot, to a lift spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our intent is to bring the power to the source, to, as someone said, and we're planning to do that already, is to bring the EV chargers in. And so it would really just be an option for each individual owner.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. I thought it was for the whole thing, so thank you.
Yeah, that is helpful. We've had other projects where it's an entire system and they're puzzle.
Yeah, this is
cars are moving around.
They're not recessed and they're not a puzzle system or anything else. They're all independent.
Okay, great.
Oh, and I did find that there is not a residential parking permit program for Lafayette Circle or Huff. And then the city's website does say that the hours of operation for the meters are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah, for looking that up. Okay, any other comments? Okay, I think staff got the comments that the Creeks Committee shared on the conditions of approval. The other comments I heard were, well, I started a request to incorporate the landscape consultants' suggestions or recommendations where possible. Somebody mentioned charging stations, and the applicant just said that they were already planning on doing that, so that's good. Is there anything else? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt resolution 20-21 and forward to City Council with our comments regarding parking, charging stations, and landscape.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
And I would add committee member Gilman's references to conditions of approval 13 and 42 to that.
Yes, thank you for inclusion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Maggio and a second by Vice Chair Farsan, and we will take a roll call vote. Vice Chair Farsan?
Aye.
Commissioner Heising?
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio?
Aye.
Commissioner Mason?
Aye.
Commissioner Radnich?
Aye.
Chair Sturm? Aye. And Sarah, am I correct in understanding, do we need the Creeks Committee members to vote on this? So this is a motion from the Planning Commission to forward to City Council.
I believe it's just for the planning commission since
Yes.
the resolution is
Right.
set up that way.
Okay, so the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for all your service to the city too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Creeks Committee. Thank you, applicant. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. We're free to.
You're free to go unless you
Thank
just
you.
want to stick around and watch us.
Good
You don't
luck.
need us Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right.
All right. Good night.
Thanks for including us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
And thanks, Nancy.
Nice to see you, Creeks people.
Bye.
Okay, we are on to item 7B. Application number or permit number LLR04-20, Happy Valley Oaks, R40 zoning. Request for a lot line revision to adjust the property lines between 3 undeveloped, unaddressed parcels on Happy Valley Road in the Hillside Overlay District. And Renat is here. We're ready for a staff report.
I'd just like to, on an administrative note, if the applicant is present, please raise your hand so we can promote you to a panelist. All right.
Renata, do you have, I'm hearing a high-pitched feedback in somebody's audio. I'm wondering if it's, no, you just muted yourself. Does anyone else hear that? Yes? No?
I'm not sure.
Did it go away? Oh, okay, that's better.
Okay.
Did you, what did you do? Don't undo it.
I didn't do anything.
Okay.
So is everyone seeing the subdivision map on your screens? Great, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. The application before you tonight is LLR 04-20, which is a request for a lot line revision for 3 undeveloped parcels and 3 undeveloped and unaddressed parcels off Happy Valley Road in the Hillside Overlay District. Tonight, staff requests the commission review the project, provide feedback to the applicant, and direct staff to prepare an approval resolution for the December 7th commission meeting. The parcels in question were created in 2013 through a major subdivision application, TR 9319, which divided a 13.7 acre site into 5 parcels for the development of single family homes. The site slopes up from the north to the south, and there's a prominent ridge through the middle of lot C. And this ridge has been restricted from development with a scenic easement created as a condition of approval for the original subdivision. The proposal is to transfer approximately 9,800 square feet of lot C to lot B and reshape the lot line to follow the 800-foot elevation line. The proposed adjustment would also transfer this small sliver of 851 square feet from lot A to B to maintain the minimum lot area of 40,000 square feet required by the zoning code. The proposed proposed adjusted lot lines would not create any new parcels or significantly affect the potential building sites on any of the 3 parcels, as much of the area to be transferred is within the scenic easement. In the staff report, I recommended the parcel geometry be simplified to remove the multiple segments in the lot line between lots B and C to create one single lot line and create one single lot line between lots A and B. After publication of the staff report, the applicant revised proposed lot line between lots B and C to be a smoother curve to follow the topography of the site. And while it's not shown on this revised parcel map on the right, the parcel map received on November 13th, the applicant has agreed to make a single lot line between those 2 parcels. The revised proposal remains in compliance with the general plan, land use designation, and with the R40 zoning, and staff is able to make all of the findings. However, as the average slope of the site exceeds 20%, the project may not be found categorically exempt from CEQA, and staff has prepared a draft initial study, which is currently in circulation for public review, and recommends a negative declaration as the project will not have a significant effect on the environment. Because the applicant has already provided this revised parcel map in response to the staff report, staff requests that the commission review the project, provide comments, and direct staff to prepare a resolution and conditions to approve the revised parcel map with the recommended change to lot A and B, and continue the matter to December 7th Planning Commission meeting. I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Renata. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Heising?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a clarification. So the recommendation in the staff report, because now we're talking about a neg deck, we need to find the project exempt from CEQA because we're going to process the neg deck. Is that what I understand? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, thank you. That answers my question.
Any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Radnich?
When will the CEQA document be ready? Or is it out for circulation?
It's out for circulation and the 20 days ends on the 1st.
So it'll close before City Council?
No. Well, City Council, the 20-day period will end on the 1st of December.
And sorry, when is the City Council? The 7th? Is that
No.
the hearing we're recommending it to?
Come back to us on the consent calendar, right?
Correct.
So it'll come back to us. Oh, right. Yeah. As mentioned projects. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, and looks like the applicant's here, so you have an opportunity to make a presentation now if you'd like, 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I missed the intro. Is there any way that you could repeat any of the beginning? I mean, I missed the part about that was involved with the city council.
We were just, Commissioner Radnich was asking about the timeline for the initial CEQA document being circulated, when it would be, when the time period would be up.
Public circulation would end and what that time was compared to when the project would come back.
And actually, it's not going to city council, right? Because the planning commission is the deciding body on this.
Correct.
I mean, that's maybe my confusion. So yeah, this is an application for a lot line adjustment to land that we've owned for 15 some years. And I feel really straightforward, pretty minimal impact. I don't have much more to say. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, you're not required to make a presentation. We give you the opportunity. Commissioner Maggio?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm just curious why this particular lot line adjustment is this parcel that's being moved over to the larger lot, is it part of the scenic easement?
It is.
Okay.
And it's land that we would like to, that we're in dialogue with on a prospective buyer. And it's desirable for us to have the land up on the hill removed.
Okay.
Does the scenic easement on lot B, excuse me, lot B, the area between where the road would go and this new lot line, that would be just landscaped area? Is that part of the?
There's
outside the open space easement.
Yeah, there's a small portion to the south of the road that is non-scenic easement land, but I wouldn't imagine that's ever going to be used. I mean, the idea would be to, sorry. The idea is to, is really to keep all of the area to the south of the road, in its current state, in a rural, an improved state.
And just following up on Commissioner Maggio's question, so I'm still sort of, what's the reason for making this portion part of Lot C? That just is important to the future owner?
It is, and there's been some contention over the land that's currently in that scenic easement area, and so the desire is to remove it from that lot.
Okay, to remove it from Lot B.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Greg?
And I just wanted to confirm what I think I heard was that the proposed lot line revision would remove not only the land that is shaded gray, but would remove the scenic easement from the resultant Lot B. Is that accurate?
You're asking me?
With respect to the intention of the lot line revision, is the intention to remove the scenic easement as shown on this map from the resultant Lot B? So B wouldn't be encumbered by a scenic easement?
No, not exclusively, because there's going to be a tiniest bit of scenic easement but in general, it would remove the scenic easement. Yes.
Okay, so you're seeing what I'm seeing, which is that there would still be a remnant little area of scenic easement still encumbering Lot B.
Ironically, almost an equal balance of, if you were to look, there's like a small triangle of land that's non-scenic easement and a triangle that is scenic easement, and it's negligible. But the general outline, as you know, it follows the topography line at the 800 foot, and it's keeping the land that's on the higher level ground out of the potential use of the owner for Lot B.
Greg, can you remind us or Renata, what development, if any, is allowed within the scenic easement? Or not even landscaping?
Essentially, the intention is to leave it as is. So native replacements could be put in, but it could not be made into a vineyard or planted with non-natives. So if there are, if there's a fire hazard or noxious plants like poison oak, those could be removed. But otherwise, the scenic easement reads that the land should just be left in its natural state.
Would they be allowed to put a solid fence along that property line?
Not if it encroaches into the scenic easement.
So no fences are allowed, or just no solid fences or no fences at all?
In the Hillside Overlay District, and I would need to check whether it's strictly ridgeline, open agricultural style fences as approved by the director. So, we do see not solid wood fences kind of running across our hillsides and ridgeline open space, but privately owned open space. But there are the need for delineating property lines, and certainly if it is this property itself was historically grazed, so there's the need for such controls on occasion, and the ordinance makes provisions for that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Renata, do you see any public comment on this item?
Received no public comment in writing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then Ms. Leamy, you don't have any other comments that you want to share with us?
Well, let's go ahead and invite anyone who is an attendee to raise their hand by clicking the raise hand option at the bottom of the screen. Okay, no raised hands.
Okay.
There
Okay,
is a raised hand.
One raised hand. Martha Clark will be brought into the meeting and then can offer comment. So it'll take a moment for Martha to join. And they are in this no man's land, no person's land of being able to hear while the transfer. So Martha Clark, go ahead and you have 3 minutes to offer your comments.
Hi, thank you. I'll be quite brief. My name is Martha Clark. I live at 4103 Happy Valley Road, which is at the base, essentially, of the hill on the south side of this property. Is that correct, south side? And I guess I'm confused by this request, as it seems the case of a few of the planning commissioners. I don't understand what the purpose of moving this line is. The applicant has mentioned that there had been contention with regard to that piece of land. We've been carefully watching the development of this land for 15 years. I'm not aware of any contention on that piece of land. It's hard for me to imagine what benefit this extra piece of land being taken away does to a buyer for Lot B. And it's hard for me to conclude that there isn't something else, some other reason for this request. And I would like to, and I think the commissioners deserve to understand what that would be. Is putting this land, for example, into the Lot C, does that enable something to be done with Lot C that is not possible without it? Those are the kinds of reasons that, if they are there, I personally would want to understand. So my real request of the commissioners is just to understand better why this lot line adjustment is necessary, because we have had, in fact, contentions about requests for lot line adjustments in this larger property. And in fact, there's a lawsuit over one of the lot line adjustment requests. So with that, I will end, but I'm somewhat mystified by the lack of explanation as to why this request has been placed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Greg or Renata, do you see any other raised hands?
There are no additional raised hands.
Okay. So Ms. Leamy, you have an opportunity to make additional comments or respond to the public comment.
Yeah, there's not any like hidden agenda other than it's an area that we would like to keep out of the purchase ability of the prospective buyer.
And Ms. Leamy, you're the owner of all 3 of these lots?
We're the owner of the 20 acres. So we would like to control all of the area that's currently denoted as scenic easement. And so, if we have more control over that, then there's not going to be issues with future owners owning land that is overlapped. So we'd kind of indicated a mark that follows the 800-foot topography line and keeping all of that out of the possession of other owners is our preference. And we have someone who's looking at that lot.
But you're developing Lot C for your, I guess I'm curious if
we will live there at some point, hopefully, before
in Lot C.
Farm 100,
Okay, so I'm curious why, if you're trying to capture the scenic easement and make it part of Lot C, why are you not proposing to continue this new property line across and capture that portion of the scenic easement that now belongs to Lot A?
I don't quite understand what you're saying.
Am I not reading this correctly?
Can you put okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I can explain that. At another point in the future, if you're talking about the land that's to the south of the road in Lot A, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. If we were to adjust that today, it triggers new CEQA requirements. And so we have to step this. And then so at some point in the future, we would like to also remove the land from Lot A that is south of the road.
Okay.
That you're only, if you're touching more than 3 lots, is my understanding, at any point in time, you can trigger certain CEQA requirements, and we do not want to go there.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission. Does anyone have any comments, or does anyone want to make a motion? Commissioner Heising?
I'll make a motion that we move this item to December 7th. Is that hold on, that's the date, right?
So Gary, do you mind if I just make one comment before you make your, if you don't, I'm not going to take time. So I recall, if I'm not, this was last year, there was another request for a lot line revision that involved 5 lots, if I remember correctly, right? I think we had that, it was, right? And it was denied, and I assume that's what's going forward. And I think that's probably one of the open issues probably for Ms. Clark, who just weighed in on it. Again, I'm just putting it out there because I remember there was confusion about the last time about why it was happening, et cetera, and moving of building pads, if there was a lot line revision. So I think there's still that open question for people who live in the area why this is happening, but I'm just putting that out there so we can kind of get a little bit of a 360 about some of the questions that neighbors have about these revisions. So that's it, and I'll defer it right back to you.
Well, actually, if Commissioner Heising's ready to make a motion, I'll make one comment. I was glad to hear Ms. Leamy talk about capturing that part of Lot A and making it part of Lot C in the future, just because I think it's an odd condition to have part of a parcel sort of jutting into another parcel. And I was asking questions about what kind of landscaping and other potential activities were allowed there, because I think if it's a piece of property that's or part of the parcel that's usable in ways, it just makes an odd condition. So I think, and I understand the reason for requesting this lot line revision, and I would hope that the lot lines cleaned up in the future to keep, to keep that condition, or to eliminate the condition that we're creating now.
All right, sorry, now one more, one more, and I apologize. And I'm assuming, and if I recall correctly, the property, the subdivision, there was a landslide issue at a certain point, right? There were a couple of landslides. So these changes that we're contemplating right now, are they in the area that were affected? I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Great.
I'd be happy to address that. I believe you should now be seeing,
We can't hear you, Greg.
Okay.
There we go.
Let me do this.
Greg, how many screens do you have? You were looking up at the ceiling.
Okay. Are you seeing Google Earth?
Yes.
Great. So I'll turn off the exhibit, but this area in here, this open, so beneath the overlay, you can see this area was one of the slide areas. You can see the geotechnical work being done in this area. So they had to essentially cut and bench, put back in engineered fill in this area. Another was over in here, but this was fixed quite some time ago with the original minor subdivision. So with this, you can see the exhibit is overlaying on the topography or the Google Earth model. And so you can see where the existing lot line goes and where the revision is.
Got it. Got it.
Wow.
Thanks. That's very helpful. Apologies, Gary.
Sorry, I couldn't offer that presentation.
Renata, we hear the feedback again. You don't know what you did before. Well, now it went away. Okay. All right, Commissioner Heising.
What if I don't want to make the motion now? I'm kidding.
Well, Commissioner Radnich is back.
I'm kidding. So I'll make a motion that we continue the matter to December 7th in order to give staff time to prepare an approval resolution and conditions of approval.
We have a
Okay, I
second.
second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Heising, second by Commissioner Maggio. Take a roll call vote. Vice Chair Farsan. You're
Aye.
muted. Commissioner Heising,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Mason,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Radnich,
Aye.
and Chair Sturm. Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leamy. Thank you, Renata. We have the sound again.
What sound? I think it's just you.
Really? Do
I'm
you?
kidding. I'm kidding.
Greg, can you bump Renata off and see if that solves our problem? No. Oh. I don't know. Okay, we'll keep going. We're almost done. Okay, we're on to item A, other business, art volunteer for December 4th.
What is that going to be? Basically online again by email or not?
It would either be email or Zoom.
Okay, and then if it's at Zoom, what time would it be?
Historically, they've been 9:15, but
I can do it if it's at 9:30. I can't do it at 9:15.
very good. We can accommodate that.
Great. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll volunteer. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rashad. Okay, item 9, commissioners' reports. Commissioner Radnich?
I can share that we've started to have a couple of meetings for the GPAC, the General Plan Advisory Committee. So we have another meeting tomorrow where we're actually going to nominate a chair and a vice chair. And so far the meetings, the two have just kind of been introductory. Primarily the city staff has been giving presentations of an overview of what to expect. So next planning commission meeting should have more of an update.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I had two things. At our meeting last week, I think it was Cheryl McDonald brought up a comment or question about noticing and signage prior to meetings. And I just wanted some clarity on, well, on my understanding was that we only put up the signs when it's transportation related. And so I'm wondering, is that correct? And then like, when is there an opportunity for us to request additional notification or signage?
Sure. So I think generally and holistically, the city in many ways goes above and beyond what the statutory requirements are for public notice. Certainly we meet a 300-foot radius mailing list, but the city council has directed for parcels in the LR zones. They tend to be larger parcels, and so to extend that buffer zone, recipient zone to 500 feet, which we do, and on occasion we'll do that in the downtown as well, just based on a professional judgment call. We post the area, so those who for some reason, if the U.S. Postal Service fails them, or they're a tenant and the landlord doesn't, they're renting a house, and we do our best to send it to all the multi-unit tenants, all the tenants in multi-unit properties. But if it's a single-family residence, we wouldn't necessarily know that it's being rented out, and so that resident occupant might not be able to receive that. We are obliged to mail it to the owner of record. And so we do post notices on telephone utility poles, or where there's a lack of those and utilities have been undergrounded, stakes in the ground proximate to the subject property. And we have the agenda service. So with simple sign up on our e-notification page, anyone can receive agendas and know all of the business that is going on in any or all of the selected commissions and committees. If someone has requested notice of something, we'll do our best to give them notice of that as well. Historically, the Circulation Commission was the entity that put up A-frame signs. Given that traffic is not necessarily a localized thing, but where neighbors would be most affected by a project, an intersection modification, or but anyone traveling through that intersection. So thus the A-frame signs. A-frame signs are prohibited under our sign ordinance. You may see them out during COVID for businesses along the boulevard and elsewhere through a non-enforcement policy during the COVID. But historically, and I believe moving forward, unless there's a change to the code, A-frame signs are not permissible under the code. So we've done enforcement up and down the boulevard periodically. And so understanding that the Circulation Commission, now TCC, has done it, there is no provision in the code to do that, but so that's why historically planning has not done it, because it's non-compliant with the code, and we would need to somehow develop new thresholds for when we do, when we don't. So with that, we can take direction and amend codes as needed. So
Okay.
that's the background on it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Farsan.
Yeah, I don't want to take time. I know it's late. I'm always in favor of more notice, and I agree with you, Greg, that we do more than it's required. I mean, I think the city does more than most any other place does, but I don't think it hurts to provide more notice, just because I think no matter what, like the A-frame signs, not one of my favorite things in the world, but I think at least people will notice those as opposed to a sign that's posted, a smaller sign, or people who haven't signed up. And again, I don't mean this for all projects. I'm just talking about the larger projects that, let's be honest, that more people are in tune with about what happens with them. So not a suggestion, but if we can come up with more, I think it's better. And it kind of takes away from the argument that people don't know these larger projects are being considered by planning or city council or whoever it may be. Just my 2 cents.
Vice Chair Farsan, it sort of blew my mind when we were doing the traffic study on the Release Valley, an Olympic Road corridor. They had those A-frame signs up. I don't know, I mean, at least for the period before one of the main meetings, but it could have been multiple times because that was a process. And there were still people that like entered into the process and had no idea that this study was going on. And they said that they traversed that route every day as, part of their travel to work. So Commissioner Mason?
More notice, less notice, I'm ambivalent about it. I wouldn't necessarily just break it down by lot size, because some of these smaller projects, we've had people coming out of the woodworks. I just want to have a consistent policy so we don't get one of those, well, you didn't notice this project like you did these other similar ones. So as long as we're consistent, I'm fine. And, we do go above and beyond. If somebody really wants to, they can find out. If somebody is, ambivalent or clueless, they'll drive right by a sign half dozen times and not notice.
And I think what Greg was saying is we are consistent. The only thing that I can think of that may be different is if it's a project that's been ongoing, there might be a special email listserv that staff uses to send out notifications rather than just through the e-notification, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on that so that we could, since we didn't respond directly to Cheryl's comment the last meeting. And then the second thing I wanted to ask about, keep you guys a couple minutes late to ask about whether people are receptive to the idea of starting our meetings earlier or whether it's even feasible. I had thought for meetings that have heavy agendas or our meeting, like our meeting last time where it was an item that took a long amount of time, that it might be helpful to start earlier to get especially to have our deliberation period earlier in the evening before late night fatigue sets in. And then also I was wondering if people are working from home, if maybe they're more able to join a 6 p.m. meeting than if you're commuting from the city or wherever. So show of hands for a preference to start our meetings. And I guess, well, actually, Greg, is it possible to just shift our meetings up to start regular start time of 6 p.m. until we change it in the future or want to change it in the future?
I'll check the code to see if we would need to amend the Muni code, but feel free to have a discussion and I'll see if I can do that in real time.
Okay, so maybe the question is, well, I guess we'll see what Greg says, whether you want to do it as a regular thing or just have it as an option for heavy agendas or big items. Vice Chair Farsan.
So I'm open to that, but I'll be completely frank. Even without the commute, my day generally pushes into the night for work. So I can't say I can regularly do it at 6, but I'm open to it for certain meetings. But for me, I cannot guarantee I can make it 6 o'clock for every meeting going forward. I can't with my work schedule.
Okay, I appreciate that. Commissioner Heising?
Yeah, excuse me. I echo that. I work oftentimes right up till 7 o'clock. So it would just, I could accommodate it. Most meetings, but as Commissioner Farsan just said, I don't know if I could commit to it every time. Just because I guess I could, and then it would just make me have to work after the Planning Commission meeting. And I guess that would, I'm just hearkening back to our Lafayette Terraces hearings where we pushed one up to 5 o'clock and we still talked till 1:45 in the morning. So I would really hate to move the meeting time forward an hour just to talk an hour longer and still finish at 11 or midnight or something. So if it's going to make the meetings get over sooner, I'm all for it. But if it's going to make the meetings longer, I'm not a fan of that. So those are just my comments.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Mason?
Yeah, I pretty much echo what the other previous commissioner said. Also I really would like to get a bite to eat before the meeting, and that's real tough if we're pushing the meeting forward. I also would like to maybe start making sure about every 3 hours or so we have a break. Some of these can go kind of long, and I think that'd be considerate. Thanks.
I try to. We're only 2 hours and 20 minutes in and we're almost done. Commissioner Maggio?
Yeah, I prefer to leave the time at 7, except for those rare exceptions when we have a particularly lengthy agenda.
Okay.
I could chime in too, Chair.
Sure.
Yeah, same. I prefer to keep it at 7, except for, here and there when it's needed to accommodate a large project or a heavy agenda.
Okay. So I heard we're going to keep it at 7, but there's times when people could accommodate 6 p.m. So then I don't always know what the agenda is. Well, sometimes I check ahead of time to see what notifications have been sent out, but if staff could just give me a heads up if you don't think I know what's coming up, so that we could poll people or figure out the start time prior to the agenda being published.
Happy to do that. So the default, and I did check the Muni code, and it does say that the regular meetings of the commission shall be held on the first and third Monday of each month at 7 p.m.
Oh, okay.
So not to say it couldn't change, but it would require an ordinance making that change. So the default will be 7, but there is openness to a 6 p.m. for a lengthy or heavy agenda, terraces or something similar, or on such occasion where there is the necessity for a closed session with the city attorney's office. But we can certainly let you know about that in advance.
Great, thank you. Planning director's report.
This is not related to the start time of meetings, but it's a request for potentially a quick additional meeting at the end of this month. November has 5 Mondays, and so the 5th, November 30th, the 5th Monday, November 30th. Staff was hoping if the commissioners were available to have a quick, I would estimate 1 hour joint session with the council and the planning commission. Staff has worked with our housing consultant to develop some potential growth scenarios, which we would seek to debut to you, get your comments on, and direction. And then I think it would be discreet to do it in a joint session on a night when there's nothing else, and it would also facilitate a compressed environmental review timeline, which we're trying to achieve. So by show of hands, who would be available on the 30th? Vice Chair is checking. But I thought I saw everyone else. Affirmative.
Greg?
Is it at 7 o'clock?
Yes.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I can push some work issues, but I can make myself available.
Okay. Yes, I apologize. I should have said 7 p.m. on the 30th. Okay, so I'm seeing all 7 affirmative. I'll confirm with the remaining council members, and we'll go for it if they're available. So
Okay.
if you would please hold that on your calendars, and then I'll send out a confirmation.
Great.
And then at your last meeting, with respect to the Miramar project, there was a suggestion and direction to get the service providers for Sunflower Hill and Las Trampas and the East Bay Center and the project applicant together to have a dialogue around serving the IDD community. And with the help of Patricia Curtin, we were able to do that. She essentially did the heavy lifting of scheduling it. And then this afternoon, we had a very good dialogue. So progress is being made there. And it was a very good meeting. So
Great.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. So it's 9:24. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good week, everybody.
Good night. You too.
Thank you, everyone.